Benedictine Spirituality. Since I was a teenager, I've been a few times in monasteries, spending a few days, a retreat. I got the chance to speak to many Benedictine monks through the years, and so I got to know their spirituality. I also read the rule, the monastic rule of Saint Benedict, and so nothing was more intimate an encounter than going to Subiaco, where it all began. Subiaco, there's a hill there, and a very steep side to that hill where there's a cave, the Sacro Specco, and that's where Benedict, as a teenager, spent 3 years of his life asking God, what should I do with my life? Which direction should I take? And so I spent a few days there, and I also prayed in that cave. So who was he? In Subiaco, Benedict meets a monk who shows him a cave at the foot of a cliff where Benedict settles for a few years. The monk regularly brings him food and texts with a basket hung on a rope and a bell. Benedict's eremitical life came to an end after 3 years when the monk died. It was during the night of Easter that a country priest was inspired in a dream to bring him food. Benedict feels called to found a monastery and writes a rule of life for the monasteries. So Saint Benedict founded the first monastery in 529, and he started with men, but also inspired women's monasteries. And that was for, obviously, cloistered for life. And as I said in a previous lecture, there were Celtic monasteries being developed in different parts of Europe, which had a totally different type of monastic life. But as the decades and centuries went on, from the 9th century onwards, the rule of Saint Benedict was imposed in the whole Western Church. And Charlemagne was actually preferred them. Although I was immersed with the monks for a while, although I read Saint Benedict's rule, it was really beneficial to watch this video from Maxwell Johnson. He's a professor of liturgy at the University of Notre Dame, and he's a Benedictine oblate. You could say an associate of that order. So he has a family, but he also collaborates with the monks and lives a part of their charisms. And here's what comes out of it. Here are some key points from Benedictine spirituality that can also inspire our spirituality of creation. The first word is listen. Then I'll talk about community, stability, moderation, the expression ora et labora, and pax. So let's explore each one of these. Listen. That is the first word of the rule of Saint Benedict. So if you're going to listen, you have to stop talking. You need silence in order to listen better. That way you can listen to the voice of God through events, through others, and even through creatures. And if you're starting to listen more and you listen to creatures, I say listen, but obviously it's observe and all of our senses. Well, it means to live in reverence for all creatures. It means that you can just stop and learn from other creatures because they're telling something about God. I think for a spirituality of creation, that's a really great predisposition to have. When I got to the entrance of the monastery in Subiaco, there was this panel with this. It was written in Italian. I'm translate it in English for you. If you seek the light, Benedict, why do you choose the dark cave? The cave does not offer the light you seek. And then Benedict answers, I continue in the darkness to seek the light that shines, for only in a dark night do the stars shine. Second point is community. And I'm also joining the importance of hospitality. What they both have in common is respect for people. Now, when they welcome a visitor, it's as if Jesus were visiting. We take care of the needs of the people coming to the monastery. So there's a huge respect for people that come from the outside. But obviously, if you're going to live 7 days a week, 24 hours a day with the same people, you need to respect those people. And in his rule, he writes, the young person respects the elder loves the young person. Also, as a community, they put all of their belongings together. So, sharing, obviously, from an environmental point of view, helps to reduce consumption. If we calculate the environmental footprint of the people living in a monastery, it is much less than the average person in the same country. Also, we'll never get out of the environmental crisis if we continue acting as individuals. We need to rediscover the sense of community. It's even written in Laudato Si. The ecological conversion needed to bring about lasting change is also a community conversion. Try to think about that next time. An ecological conversion is only possible with community conversion. And the Benedictines are showing us the way. The next important point is stability. I remember visiting in a monastery, and the monk was just asking me, so what are your studies and what are you doing with your life? And I was saying I had already found my 5th job, and I was studying a 3rd department now, and you know, it's just my life was cluttered. And he said, have you ever thought of stability? And that's the first time in my life it actually dawned on me, yeah, maybe stability would be nice. So the monks are rooted in a place in order to bear better fruit. It allows us to love the place and to know it intimately. And obviously, well, it's to start building a sense of family in that community. Stability is so important that it's part of the 3 vows. Now, probably you've heard of chastity, poverty, and obedience, which are the vows for Franciscans and other orders. But the Benedictines actually have 3 vows. It's stability, obedience, and conversion of life. And that one actually includes poverty and chastity. So stability is that important. They vow to be stable. The next point is moderation. The uncluttering and austerity of the monks allow them to concentrate on the essential. It allows one to value relationships rather than possessions. This refusal of overconsumption allows one to discover joy in small things. I don't think I really need to explain the link with environmental values for this one. Just the last word, though, on moderation. Moderation does not mean that you live a slave's life and you're deprived of everything. Moderation can actually be a source of joy. When you drink 1 beer with friends like that, well, you're appreciating that beer. It's a good moment. But, when you drink 5 of them and you lose your senses, you lose the joy as well. Ora et labora. I remember the different monasteries where I've been. It's written on the floor, it's written on the walls. We see that all over the place. It means pray and work. It's from Latin. It's the expression that sums up the rhythm of the monks and this balance of life. There are 7 moments of prayer that punctuate a day of work and reading. So, starts with laudes, then it goes around prima, tertia, sexta, nona, visper, completa. These 7 moments, and the reason why it's 7 is simply because in the Psalms, in the book of Psalms, there's this reference of, I pray to you 7 times a day. That's where it comes from. And so, the Psalms also, by the way, they evoke creation many times. So imagine, you're probably used to your day at work, or, you do work, and then once every Sunday you hear a psalm. Well, for the monks, it's 7 times a day that they hear the psalms, and that there's a reference to creation. So imagine, you hear about creation, then you go outside and you work on the fruit trees, or you work on the farm, or you go walk in the forest, and then you go back and you hear about creation, and then you go back outside and you're working again. So in this rhythm, you're always rediscovering creation because it's always brought back to mind. It's also living by the work of our hands. We become stewards of creation. Because, lots of other clergy, for example, they're disconnected from manual work. In this case, you have very prayerful people, but who are also working with their hands. So there's this sense of stewards of creation. In Laudato Si, there's an explicit mention of Saint Benedict. Saint Benedict of Nursia proposed that his monks live in community, combining prayer and spiritual reading with manual labor, hence ora et labora. This way of experiencing work makes us more protective and respectful of the environment. It imbues our relationship to the world with a healthy sobriety. And now the word pax, which means peace in Latin, and it's a principle that is found in the rule of Saint Benedict. Peace is the foundation of a community and the announcement of the kingdom of God. What do I mean by that? Well, a family that works has peace. A community, like the monks living together, can only work if we're searching for peace. And imagine being a visitor, that you come from, the whirlwind of everyday life, and then you come into this peaceful place. You start experiencing the kingdom of God. Peace is accompanied by justice, truth, and love, which we find in Psalm 85. In order to achieve peace, one must make space. And this is where the architecture of the monastery is really interesting, because there's a cloister. So, when you look at the whole architecture of a monastery, there's one wing that has the cells where they sleep, another wing where they eat, and then there can be another wing with the library, and another wing, another section for the visitors, obviously, and maybe some place to work. But through all of these, in the center, there's this uncluttered space with open sky and a walkway all around, protected if ever it rains. But the part in the middle is open. And that just shows that when they wake up and they go from one section to the other, they're always passing through this uncluttered space. And it's a reminder that if we want God in our lives, we have to make space. This is one example, and usually cloisters also had a well in the middle, which symbolizes Christ, the living water. Sometimes there's vegetation, or sometimes it's very simple, just stones in the middle. But each time we go through those walkways, we see this uncluttered space. We make space for God, for peace. And so we're not in an act of possession. We're not even in an act of efficiency, making a building where everything is just so stuck together. No, we need this space, this common space. One example I'd like to give is I've seen some clusters of apartment buildings, but then there's a common park in the middle. I mean, just that, rather than taking the whole block and only making apartments, well, leaving some of that space, some empty space or some natural space. Then came, through the years, Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. He's the one who took the turning and opened up a new type of Benedictine monks called the Cistercians. And he founded 72 monasteries. He's the author of many books on theology, and he's a doctor of the church. And although he wrote so many books, here's one of the most important things he wrote: "You will learn more in the forest than in books. The trees and the rocks will teach you what no master could reveal." So the Cistercians are a slightly different flavor of the rule of Saint Benedict. Some things are just reinterpreted more rigorously, I guess. They're usually vegetarians, and you can see with their founder, Bernard de Clairvaux, that they have a certain reverence for nature as well. You can see their vestments are different. They have a mixture of black and white rather than being all black. Another very important figure environmentally in the Benedictine family is Saint Hildegard. This Benedictine cloistered nun combined scientific observation and mystical contemplation of nature. She studied the properties of plants in order to fabricate medicines. She was also a writer and composer and is recognized as a doctor of the church. My experience with different Benedictine abbeys were here in Quebec, but also in other places in Europe where I visited. There's one in Saint-Benoît-du-Lac, also a Cistercian abbey in Rougemont. They have an orchard, and lots of kids in catechesis go pick the apples there in the month of September. And one that I know even more intimately is Val-Notre-Dame Abbey. That's in Saint-Jean-de-Matha, in the middle of Quebec. And so this is a book that was offered to me by the abbot, André Barbeau, which shows this through pictures, and it tells the story of those monks. It's a wonderful book, nicely illustrated. And I've went to pray there a few times, and see, there's no stained glass or wall. It's just huge windows. And when they pray, well, this is the background. It's creation itself that we can see. It's so beautiful. And one of the monks told me that when they started praying there in the first few days, it changed their way of praying, because they were so used to, stopping, doing the prayer, leaving, because they were between four walls, and that was it. One of the first times they prayed there, a bear passed right in front of the window. And so some of them stopped, some of them continued, and when only a few were continuing, well, they lifted up their head and they stopped as well. And they just admired and contemplated. And they learned to integrate that contemplation and that sense of amazement, of awe, into their praise to God. And now they say they've raised to a level of praise that they never had before. They really put their words into action because they had to move from Oka to this new place. And they decided to have an energy efficient building. A very rigorous process. The way the building is made, there are lots of windows, so there's lots of passive solar. Usually on the south side, the number of windows is amazing. It's heated with geothermal energy, so very, very low cost and low use of energy. Water recovery. They use rainwater for some of the things there. And this is one of the most amazing things. They've rediscovered edible forest products. So when we say that the monks listen to nature, well, that's what some of them did. They started listening and just trying to find what was God already offering them in nature all around. And they've been designing all kinds of products that they sell in their little boutique. So here they are, the main points that can help us reflect on a spirituality of creation inspired from the Benedictine spirituality. Listen. Listen to others and listen to the creatures around. Community. Let's put some of our belongings together. That'll reduce our environmental impact. And also, let's do things as a community rather than just individuals. Stability. When we do that, we get to know our natural environment. Moderation. I mean, being minimalists, voluntarily reducing our consumption of stuff. Ora et labora. Finding a rhythm in life through prayer and action. And pax. Uncluttering our lives to make space for what's essential. So what elements of Benedictine spirituality can make your spirituality grow?